Working with each agronomic and horticultural crop comes with its own set of challenges, and one of the biggest challenges in a woody plant breeding program is the time it takes to get a mature plant from seed. This can take years. Depending on the crop, some breeders are able to fix traits of interest by going through multiple generations of inbreeding to create uniform plants with desired traits. In woody plants, this takes too long, so we fix traits by cloning or asexual propagation. Stem cutting propagation is a relatively simple and inexpensive means of cloning plants of interest.
This is one of my research plants. It's a plant called Sarcococa. The common name is sweetbox. And I'm interested in this plant because it shows a lot of landscape potential. But we only have one of these available to work with. And so I'd like to propagate this plant by stem cutting so that we can have more plants to evaluate in our location and in different locations, as well as have more plants to use for breeding if we're interested in making improved Sarcococa with this as a parent.
Here I am taking stem cuttings approximately 4 to 6 inches in length. Cuttings taken at this stage in the summer are called semi-hardwood. When a plant first begins growing in the spring, it produces new shoots that are very green and floppy. Over time, these shoots begin to mature and harden. It is at this stage that they are called semi-hardwood. It is believed that early morning is the best time to take cuttings because that is when the cuttings are most full of water and when the air temperature around them is the coolest. Taking cuttings at this time helps to ensure that the cuttings will not dry out before you stick them. Here I am preparing the cutting propagation medium. There can be few or many components, but the potting medium should provide sufficient aeration while having a high water holding capacity. We often make a general purpose medium consisting of a 1-to-1 ratio of perlite to Promix BX with mycorrhizae. Now I am preparing the cuttings for sticking. First I remove the lower leaves to make it easier to insert the stems into their pots. I also trim the stems to make sure that the cuttings look uniform. Often wounding the cuttings can improve rooting. You already wound the cuttings when you excise them from the original plant, but you can create more of a wound by making a 1/2 inch to 1 inch slice at the base of the cutting. Extra wounding will often lead to additional callus and root formation along the margins of the wound. Wounding can be quite time consuming, so it's best to know if the wounding is actually necessary for your plant. For Sarcococa, I can get roots to form without extra wounding, but wounding does seem to lead to faster and better rooting. A key step in stem cutting propagation often involves the application of a rooting hormone. Auxin is the primary plant hormone applied to cuttings, and it is necessary for the initiation of adventitious roots on stems. We frequently use a rooting product called hormone, which is a talc-based formulation of a synthetic auxin called indole 3-butyric acid, or IBA. A 1000 ppm IBA concentration has been adequate for getting Sarcococa to root. To apply the hormone, simply make sure the cutting is moist, dip it in the powder, tap off any excess, and then stick the cutting into the potting medium. Other formulations of auxin are available for use. Here I am using an aqueous solution of 3000 ppm IBA to try to root cuttings from a plant called Chinese ironwood or Parodius subequalis. Here I simply dip the cuttings into the solution for 5 seconds. When working with an aqueous solution of IBA, one must be careful that the cuttings themselves are not wet, because any addition of water can dilute the actual concentration of IBA. Once all cuttings have been stuck in the potting medium, they can be moved to a mist bench. Our mist benches are covered in shade cloth to reduce water loss from the cuttings. Mist is turned on by a controller which allows us to specify the duration of the mist and the frequency at which it turns on. Different plants have different water requirements, but because we are often propagating so many types of plants at once, we usually put everything under mist for 10 seconds every 10 or 20 minutes. This is what Sarcococa cuttings can look like after 3 months under mist. Some types of plants root far faster, while some are slower or nearly impossible to root. These are cuttings that I let grow for a few more months. Once you are satisfied that the plants can survive on their own roots without being under regular mist, you can pot them. Here I have potted some cuttings into a more traditional nursery production mix, and then top dressed them with a slow release fertilizer. I now intend to move them to our shade production area to acclimate. Stem cutting propagation is a fun and valuable technique for cloning plants, and it is essential in a woody ornamental plant breeding program. Each plant has its own challenges and quirks, and it is best to consult the literature before proceeding. Some of the first sources I will consult are Hartman and Kester's Plant Propagation, the Reference Manual for Woody Plant Propagation, the Proceedings of the International Plant Propagator Society, and the Proceedings of the Southern Nursery Association's Research Conference.